The story of the relationship between Elvis Presley and Priscilla like you've never seen before. Priscilla comes to us from A24 Studios, was written and directed by Sofia Coppola, who is the daughter of, wait for it, you're not going to believe this, Francis Ford Coppola! Yeah, Francis Ford Coppola. If you're unfamiliar with that name, really, I don't know what you're doing even watching films. You should at least know the name. What do you want from me? Coppola's a pretty popular last name. But Sofia Coppola has carved out a hell of a name for herself as far as being a filmmaker. The Virgin Suicides. Oh boy, that was certainly a bleak movie. Then again, given the title, I think that was entirely expected. Lost in Translation, which, by the way, was goddamn terrific. It told, the story of a romance between an older man and a younger woman. Gee, it's almost like she was preparing for this movie. Marie Antoinette and other stuff. It was based on the book Elvis and Me, Elvis and Me, Elvis and Me, Elvis and Me, and he groomed her when she was just 14, by Sandra Harmon, and it was executive produced by Priscilla Presley, who is still alive. Oh, did it slip down there again? Anybody that remembers Priscilla Presley from the Naked Gun movies, there you go. She tried to carve out a name for herself after, the marriage dissolved between her and Elvis. And this is a story from her perspective. Okay, so A24 is my favorite goddamn studio ever. I mean, seriously, I don't think I've loved a studio since New Line Cinema as much as A24. But then again, I was a teenager when New Line Cinema was, I guess, at the peak of their powers, but A24 and Neon Studios. I mean, really, it just, it's right there. It's just, they're almost neck and neck. But A24, you put their goddamn label on the marquee and I will watch it. 9 times out of 10, at least. I haven't seen every single A24 movie. And sure, 95% of the time, they basically, hit it out of the park. Few times they don't, the monster. But more often than not, A24 does good shit. So yes, Sofia Coppola tells the story of, based on the book, of Priscilla, who, yes, met Elvis at a German military base in 1959. And it was a whirlwind romance where, Elvis would leave her and then come and get her and then brought her to Memphis, Graceland, and married her when she was young, and we get to see basically how Priscilla handled that. She didn't handle it well. Who would? You know why Priscilla didn't handle it all that well? There are a few reasons for that. Namely, the fact that Priscilla was born in 1945. And, Elvis met and, got with her in 1959. If you're not a math major, that's 14. That is the bride and groomer, as, some might say. I will say that is one of the strengths of this movie, is Sofia Coppola doesn't pull any punches and basically says, this is what Elvis did. Is Elvis the only entertainer, the only singer, the only whatever to do something like this? No, he's not. Luc Besson, the main girl from Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and others. I don't understand what's wrong with dating somebody that's not only of legal age, but maybe not so far underage that basically they aren't even in high school yet. I mean, unless they're really, really smart, or unless they just happen to have the right birth date and everything. But they're just, if they're in high school, they're barely in high school. I mean, 14, and people just ignore this about Elvis, who's a terrific musician. Don't get me wrong, but this is the second Elvis movie that has come out basically in the last, year and a half? You had the Baz Luhrmann movie, which, Jesus Christ, I got a lot of hate for basically saying that movie glossed over a whole lot of shit. It told a lot of stuff and glossed over a lot. I'm not saying this movie tells everything, but it does at least give a perspective of Priscilla Presley, who I haven't even mentioned, who plays Priscilla. Kaylee Spaney, who is in Pacific Rim 2 and The Craft Legacy. So at least Kaylee stepped up as far as film quality here, because Pacific Rim 2, not great. The Craft Legacy, absolute abomination. Not her fault, not anybody's fault in the movie. It was just trash. Elvis was played by Jacob Elordi. I've seen him before. This does focus a lot more on Priscilla, obviously, as you would expect with a film named Priscilla. The big issue is, besides Kaylee's performance, I'm just going to say right now, A24, swing and a miss, buddies. Swing and a miss. This got some praise, and I get it. Stylistically, it looks great. It does kind of show, Priscilla's life in a dreamlike state because it's a whirlwind romance. Also, she met him when she was 14. Got into a lot of the, you know, activities that Elvis liked to partake in. The side stuff and everything, the booze, the pills, and stuff like that. Yeah, just hand pills and booze to a underage girl. It's fine. The parents, just okayness, it's fine. That's the one thing I just couldn't understand about this. All this could have been avoided. All of it. And clearly, Elvis either had friends prey on these girls, or Elvis preyed on him. Or preyed on him. And that's the one thing that I just wish that people would remember about some of these art, and that's why I'm glad Sofia Coppola did this. The problem is also the movie was aggressively boring. I mean, Jesus, this was aggressively boring. It was not that interesting outside of Kaylee's performance. Yes, it was more of just, her being in this world that she couldn't possibly, fathom because she was still, when they got married, I mean, she was barely in her, early 20s and stuff like that. That's just fucking ridiculous. He fucking groomed this goddamn girl and then treated her like crap, but then would treat her really nice and would just do this and manipulate and did all this stuff. And I'm not saying that Elvis was not somebody that was manipulated by outside forces as well and wasn't pulled in a bunch of different directions creatively, but he still was a piece of shit for how he treated Priscilla. Now, was she, somebody that was exactly innocent? I mean, you could kind of argue she was innocent because she was just taken, as a 14-year-old girl and thrust in this goddamn life. So, of course, she would expect for all this, she would expect Elvis to be there because that's what you want your first love to be. But no. We're just going to have Elvis be a full-on prick. And he was. Now, I'll say Jacob did a really good job pretending, pretending to care about Priscilla. He did a great job balancing the whole thing of Elvis. Elvis didn't give a shit about Priscilla. I refuse to believe he did. I refuse to fucking believe it. Not just because of this presentation, but just because of the irrefutable facts that are out there. 14 years old. I can't get over that. I can't fucking get over that. This movie's out in theaters if you want to check it out, by the way. Kaylee, again, deserves credit. Her performance was pretty good. And, Jacob was good. The supporting cast are fine. It's just this also seemed almost like snapshots of her life. And since it was taking place just with their marriage and stuff like that, which makes sense, there were things that were... The part that I loved was actually on the German base. And until they actually fully left Germany, that was fine. And then it just got messy and sloppy. And while there were some cool parts and stylistically it looked impressive, this just ended up not being really all that great outside of Kaylee's performance. I ended up being pretty bored by this. I was like, okay, yeah, all this was easily preventable. And this probably isn't going to sit well with some Elvis fans because I'm not taking anything away from his music. The guy was an incredible musician. Died on the fucking toilet, which was rather hilarious and fitting for the fact that he was so full of shit as a person. But as far as his style, could he have ripped off other people? Sure. What other musicians don't rip off others? I'm not saying it's cool, but he ain't the only one. But one of many. I mean, Jerry Lee Lewis. Goodness gracious. Great 13-year-old. Yeah, I'm just going to say that right there. I think 13. The whole point is maybe don't be a scuzzy son of a bitch and groom people. It's in theaters if you want to check it out. Kaylee's performance is great. Everything else, kind of a wash. Swing and a miss by A24. 3, 2, 1, and spoilers. Yeah, that probably actually was mostly spoilers there because if you read the book, the Germany part was fucking terrific. And just the fact that he kissed her when she was 14. Kissed her when she was 14. You don't do that unless you're a fucking creep. And I mean, again, the acting was fine. And Priscilla getting caught in this whirlwind romance, not wanting to be with her parents, wanting to go be with Elvis because she loved him. And he's out on movie sets, and then the stuff with Anne Margaret and various other people. I believe Nancy Sinatra was Nancy Sinatra. Anne Margaret. It'd be hard to resist Anne Margaret at that time. Boy, howdy. Nancy Sinatra, I guess. I mean, I guess if you're into that. But Anne Margaret looked great. But then there's stuff like she'd be at home. She had the dog that was keeping her company. Little Bichon Frise. I think that was the kind of dog. It was an adorable dog. I hope that dog's doing well. It's a fucking dog. What would I understand about a review? But they do end up having a kid, Lisa Marie. Very sad ending for her. As far as Priscilla, Priscilla's been through a lot. And again, I'm not saying that Priscilla is like the most innocent person. I'm sure she's done terrible things in her life. We've all said things that we regret. Not a lot of us were 14 years old being groomed by a rock star. So yeah, I think maybe she gets a bit of a mulligan for some of that shit. But that being said, it goes through the various points and everything, and the fact that Elvis was, had to have things his way. Oh, you don't want to do this and be at my beck and call. You can go home. And then would switch around because he realized, shit, I need to keep manipulating her. Even though he could have had any woman he wanted, it was about control. It was about control, and that's all it is. And eventually Priscilla had to take control of her life. Now, what happened with her kid? I don't know what happened with the goddamn kid, because the kid was just left at the house, and she drove off as And I Will Always Love You by Dolly Parton played. Yes, Dolly Parton actually sung that song well before Whitney Houston did. And well before Whitney Houston did her rendition of Singing in the Bathtub, that was taken way too literally. Yeah, this is going well. This is another one. It's kind of like After Yang. Except After Yang was a lot more boring than this. This was like a one performance movie with like a sub performance by Jacob, and I mean the rest of the cast was fine, and stylistically it looked okay at worst and pretty good at best. Like Sofia Coppola has an eye for good shots, but as far as a story, it was a lot of stuff where it's like you just feel gross afterwards. Which I'm not saying it's supposed to necessarily be a happy story, but she stood up for herself and left. I don't know. This just didn't click for me. C+. It gets a C+. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.